At the American Business Immigration Coalition, our mission is to achieve sensible federal immigration reform to strengthen the U.S. economy and keep families together. With the forced shutdowns underway across the country to contain the spread of the coronavirus, our co-chairs decided to focus our efforts on ensuring that the most vulnerable are covered in the economic stimulus package. We know that the over 30 million small businesses across the U.S. and their 60 million workers do not have powerful lobbyists in Washington. We know that absent support, they could be left behind during the current crisis like many were in 2008. I'm just going to ask, please, if you are a speaker, to put yourself on mute. There is a little bit of a background noise. Please put yourself on mute if you're not me. I'm speaking. So if you're not me, please put yourself on mute. Thank you. Thank you very much. Over the weekend, we saw that the White House announced that it would extend social distancing guidelines for at least until the end of April. That means preparing for at least another month of life in lockdown. For some people, this means figuring out how to pay rent, utilities, and credit cards. For others, how many workers to keep on the payroll. Decisions that Americans make this week will signal how deeply the pandemic will impact the economy. So this is a really, really tough time for all sorts of businesses and individuals across the country. One indication of this is that we have over 5,000 people registered for this webinar, small businesses, nonprofits. And look, because different states are in different stages of dealing with the pandemic, we see a patchwork of responses. But last Friday, we saw some unified relief from the federal government when the Payroll Protection Program was approved as part of the $2 trillion stimulus plan. Behind the scenes, to win this program was an unlikely coalition of influencers unified to protect the little people, our small businesses and workers. Republican Senator Marco Rubio and Democrat Representative Nydia Velázquez led the charge, together with Senators Durbin and Cardin, convening bipartisan, bicameral support to deliver a $377 billion relief for our small businesses, nonprofits, and their workers, while fiercely protecting its provisions and mechanisms when the rest of the deal seemed to fall apart several times. We witnessed conservatives and billionaires, immigrant advocates led by the NPNA, the Restaurant Association, ABIC, and others support our mom and pop shops, hourly workers, 1099 workers, the gig economy, and independent contractors. I want to emphasize that this is a grant, not a loan. This is a grant, not a loan, when businesses use the money to cover payroll and overhead. While we still have a long way to go, this is something worth celebrating. So the way we structure today's webinar is, first, we will hear from our political champions. Second, we will go into some details on the content of the law. Third, we will talk about program rollout, next steps. And then we will open it up for questions and answers. So if you look to the right side of your screen, you'll see a text box. You can enter your questions at any time during the webinar. Good, I see a lot of heads nodding and people starting to put their question in there. So you can enter questions at any time during this webinar. All of the content today should be covered by approximately 1:45 Eastern. We will take questions into the hour and we will end promptly at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. So this webinar will be 1 hour and a half, 1.5 hours. The other thing I want to emphasize is that the language in this law was written to be inclusive of different types of businesses and inclusive of different types of workers. We may need to fight together to ensure that the regulations that will be written are as inclusive as the legislative language. This is the first in a series of webinars in the implementation of the Paycheck Protection Program. The scale of this program is gigantic. This $377 billion program amounts to 15 times what the Small Business Administration's 7A loan program gave out in fiscal year 2009. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said on Fox News yesterday that he expects loans to be ready starting at the end of the week. We know that standing up a new government program is difficult, even in the most benign and operational and credit environment. The tsunami of demand, coupled with staffing limitations, suggests that there will be friction in the initial rollout. This is all to say that not every question can be answered today, and we will work to problem solve with you on this program as it rolls out. That is a commitment to you from the American Business Immigration Coalition, the National Partnership for New Americans, the National Restaurant Association, the Illinois Restaurant Association, and the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association. So first, I'm honored to introduce Sam Toya, the CEO of the Illinois Restaurant Association, a fearless fighter to get his workers paid, and a visionary leader for the hospitality industry. Sam?
Thank you, Becca. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sam Toya, President and CEO of the Illinois Restaurant Association. 11 days ago, the Phase 3 economic stimulus package left out many restaurants and their workers. In Illinois, we always say, you're either at the table or you're on the menu. 11 days ago, we were on the menu. The IRA started working with Rebecca, the American Business Immigration Coalition, Executive Vice President of Public Affairs Sean Kennedy at the National Restaurant Association, and the independent restaurant operators across the United States. Thanks to all of us working together, emphasizing all of us working together, and the leadership of Senator Rubio, Senator Cardin, Senator Durbin, and Representative Velázquez, our industry was at the table. We were able to build a broad-based coalition of support, including our association and independent restaurant operators, in order to help secure definitions of small business and nonprofits that are the most comprehensive and provide the most possible relief to restaurants and millions of our employees. We appreciate Senator Rubio, Senator Durbin, Senator Cardin, and Representative Velázquez and our other congressional champions for recognizing the tremendous impact this crisis has had on the restaurant and hospitality industry. This is personal to me. I grew up in the industry, and my family had restaurants across Chicago. In any restaurant, you come in for the food, but you come back for the service. Our workers and team are not like family, they are family. 10% of Americans work in the restaurant and hospitality industry. With restaurants shutting their doors every day and thousands of workers losing their only source of income, I truly applaud Chairman Rubio, Chairwoman Velázquez for achieving real relief for all restaurants, our workers, and our family. The IRA looks forward to working with our partners, champions, and SBA to get cash quickly to pay our workers and keep our businesses open. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sam. Now I would like to introduce Ava Malona. Ava is speaking as the co-chair of the National Partnership for New Americans, our partner in advocating for this program. Ava is the director of the Massachusetts Immigrant and Refugee Coalition. She is a naturalized immigrant herself and one of the most respected leaders in the immigrant rights movement in this nation.
Thank you so much, Rebecca and Sam. Good afternoon, everyone. It was a pleasure to work with the American Business Immigration Coalition and its outstanding leadership, and with the Restaurant Association to advocate for the small business relief package. The National Partnership for New Americans is an institution of immigrant serving justice organization working in 37 states. Our members stretch from Charlotte in California to the Welcoming Center of Portland, Maine, from One America in Washington to the Florida Immigrant Coalition. National Partnership for New Americans advocates for policies that allow new Americans to fully participate and fully contribute to our nation while living lives of dignity. This includes naturalization and citizenship, English support for immigrant workers and businesses, and health care. We are disappointed that the immigrants were excluded in many ways from the CARES legislation. This includes the economic benefits that will stabilize families, and we believe that almost suicidal exclusion of immigrants from the COVID-19 testing and treatment in this pandemic. But we are very proud of the bipartisan and bicameral leadership in the Senate and House on the small business and nonprofit support, and we thank them from their hard work. The small business relief provisions are written to be useful and inclusive of all small businesses of many types, of the workers who work for them, many of whom are immigrants, and of the nonprofits who serve our communities. National Partnership for New Americans looks forward to working diligently with the Small Business Administration to assist with the implementation of this program. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ava. I just ask all the speakers to please speak louder when it is your turn. I'm honored to introduce ABIC co-chair John Rowe, the chairman emeritus of Exelon Corporation. John and Josh Hoyt, the director of NPNA, co-founded ABIC. We kicked off ABIC in multiple states to fight for immigration reform. John grew up on a dairy farm in Dodgeville, Wisconsin, where diversity meant Catholics and Methodists. Today, John opens many doors for the little people, the immigrants, the refugees, the others. Mr. Rowe reminds me and the team that as we grow and expand across the country, as we get press and recognition, our focus must stay the same. We help the people. Let people's pain guide our actions. Please help me welcome ABIC co-chair and our Avenger for Justice, Mr. John Rowe.
Thank you, Becca. You're too flattering as always. My purpose today is fundamentally to introduce Senator Rubio, who was a real driver for the provisions of this bill that help not-for-profits, that help small businesses, and that help the employees of those small businesses, including immigrants. Without Senator Rubio's initiative, we simply wouldn't have achieved this. But before I say more about Senator Rubio, I must mention a couple other people. Congresswoman Velázquez was wonderful. I believe that Senator Cardin was the first Democratic senator to go arm in arm with Senator Rubio on this. And then when it came to the end, Senator Durbin of Illinois was there for the immigrants, as he has been on every occasion. So my deepest thanks to all three of these people. But now back to Senator Rubio. Dick Durbin once introduced me as a pretty good guy for a rather dark Republican. But Senator Rubio is my kind of Republican. He is my wife's kind of Republican. He is the kind of Republican that believes in fiscal discipline, even though it had to be somewhat waived this time. He's the kind of Republican who believes in people of all colors. He's the kind of Republican who works to make the system work for everybody. So I'm just delighted to have this chance to introduce Senator Rubio, who of course needs no introduction, but to thank him from the very bottom of my heart for all the work that he's done on this bill. Thank you very much, Senator.
Thank you, John. Go ahead, Senator Rubio.
Hi, it's Marco Rubio. First, let me thank John Rowe and the American Business Immigration Coalition for focusing on this part of our bill that helps small business. About 6 or 8 weeks ago, a great partnership with Chairwoman Velázquez in the House, my Democratic counterpart in the Senate, Ben Cardin of Maryland, and then later on, Susan Collins of Maine and Jean Shaheen of New Hampshire, we got together and began to craft a way to help small businesses, knowing that if we were going to have quarantines and close downs here in the U.S., small business was going to be deeply impacted. And of course, over the last few weeks, this has developed in a way where our plan had to get much bigger. But the reason we were able to move so quickly is that we've been working on it in a bipartisan way for quite a while now. Here's the outlines of the plan. It's pretty straightforward. We wanted to make it simple. Small businesses that qualify under the SBA criteria or 500 employees or less, along with not-for-profits, 501c3s under 500, and now independent workers, 1099 people that work in the gig economy. You will go to a lender. There's over 800 lenders already that can start right away doing this. You will go to a private lender, and all you have to do is verify the existence of the company and verify your payroll. And they will qualify for 250% of their monthly payroll. They will get this money, and as long as they spend it on payroll, rent, lease, mortgage, or utilities, related expenses like that, they will not have to pay it back. 100% forgivable. Banks should be able to start right away. Banks should be participating in this. You're going to get paid a fee. There's no underwriting. It's fully guaranteed. You have a guaranteed buyer for this instrument. And it's not going to take very long. All you have to do is verify payroll and the existence of the company. Ideally, small businesses would be going to their own bank who could quickly verify payroll by just looking at their account. We think this is going to help a lot of people. And I am grateful to all of you for putting the word out about how this program works, connecting banks and lenders to small businesses and vice versa, and putting in place all of the elements to make this successful. But I cannot thank all of you enough for focusing on this, putting the word out about this, because our biggest challenge now is letting small businesses know that this exists and how it works. And our hope here is to protect the paychecks of millions of Americans during this very difficult and unusual time. This is a huge program, and your help is extraordinary, and we are very, very grateful. Thank you. Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you so much, Senator. Raul Raimundo is the CEO of the Resurrection Project, one of the most successful Latino-led community development corporations. The Resurrection Project is a board member of both NPNA and ABIC. Raul?
Thank you, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois, the #2 Democrat in the Senate. At a critical moment, Senator Durbin acted to ensure that this small business and nonprofit protection program will move forward in a bipartisan manner. Senator Durbin has always been a champion of immigration reform, and was the original sponsor of the DREAM Act. Thank you, Senator, for all your leadership and everyone else who has been instrumental in making this happen. Senator Durbin?
Raul, I hope you can hear me. I've been following this program. I want to thank Rebecca and John Rowe and everyone who's part of it. And let me give credit where it is due. You just heard from my colleague and friend Marco Rubio. He and I were part of the original Gang of Eight when it came to immigration reform a few years back. I count him as a friend, and he's been a real ally in the effort that he has led with Senator Ben Cardin in the Senate, Jean Shaheen and Susan Collins, as well as Nydia Velázquez in the House of Representatives. I was contacted first by none other than Sam Toya, who is on this program, who brought in a group of restaurateurs from the city of Chicago. And they talked to me about what they were facing with closure and what it meant to their workforce and the future of restaurants that they have had open for generations and their families. It's more than a business. It is part of their lives. And they came to see me and they talked about how we could address this issue. They said this Rubio-Cardin bill was the place that they wanted my support. I contacted Marco Rubio and Ben Cardin, lengthy conversations, questions, suggestions, and we moved forward. The interesting thing was, from the very beginning of the discussion of this third bill in the coronavirus package, the Rubio, Cardin, and Velázquez, I might quickly add, piece of legislation was the most solid bipartisan element in the whole discussion. Every one of us, both sides of the aisle, House and Senate, realized if you can't help small businesses, restaurants and other businesses this size, get back on their feet, the American economy is not going to get back to where we all want to see it. So we made this kind of the centerpiece. Well, we went back and forth on a lot of other provisions in the final package, and I won't go through those because they don't relate to our specific meeting here. But I will tell you something just short of a miracle occurred. Last week, on Thursday, late at night, by a vote of 96-0, we passed this coronavirus 3 package in the United States Senate. It would have been 100-0, but 4 Republican senators were out because they had either been diagnosed with the coronavirus or were suspecting and were putting themselves in self-quarantine. It would have been 100-0, I'll bet you, if they all would have been there. In the House of Representatives, they had to convene on an emergency basis. They passed it with a unanimous roll call. And of course, this was one of the major elements in this approach. The real businesses, the ones in front of and behind the swinging doors in the restaurants, are going to be able to be sustained because of this program. Loans that can be forgiven. And it won't just apply to restaurants. That's pretty obvious. If you have a small business, fewer than 500 employees, you can qualify as well. We also, as Marco Rubio has noted, invite banks across the country to participate with really no exposure on their end of it, other than to do the right thing and help these businesses come up with the money they need to keep their team together during this difficult and challenging time. It's far from perfect, but it's a good bill. And it's a good law that's going to help America get back on its feet. Thanks to all of you in the Immigration Coalition. It's been great to work with you on so many issues, and this is one of our biggest victories. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Senator Durbin. At a critical moment of this legislation, Senator Ben Cardin listened to advocates like CASA, chose to pass by bipartisanship with Senator Rubio to craft this legislation and help to win bipartisan bicameral program. Senator Cardin ensured that nonprofits like CASA will be eligible for 7A loans. It is my pleasure to introduce the President and CEO of CASA, Gustavo Torres.
Thank you very much, Becca. Senator Ben Cardin is the senior senator of Maryland and the ranking Democrat on the Senate Small Business Committee. At a critical moment, he listened to advocates like CASA, choose the path of bipartisanship with Senator Rubio to craft this legislation and help to win a bipartisan bicameral program that is inclusive of many types of businesses and all of their employees, and includes those most affected by this pandemic. Senator Cardin ensured that nonprofits like CASA will be eligible for a 7A loan. Thank you, Senator. Please help me to welcome Senator Cardin. Go ahead with the video.
Hello, this is Senator Ben Cardin. Thank you all very much for having this teleconference in order to understand parts of the CARES Act that applies to small business. We all have to work together to get through this crisis. And in this bill is bipartisan legislation with new tools to help small businesses get through this economic crisis, healthcare crisis. The bill provides 3 new programs that have a loan forgiveness for 2 months of payroll plus other expenses. It has an emergency grant of up to $10,000 to those who need cash immediately. And it has a 6-month reprieve from paying your existing loans under the SBA. And there are a lot of other provisions in this bill. We urge you to get information. On my website, I have an owner's guide for small business under the CARES Act. Please take a look at that. Go to our resource partners who are there to help you. We all want to make sure that you take advantage because small businesses are the engine of our economy. We want to make sure they're taken care of. We think this bill will go a long way, $377 billion of relief. Again, thank you very much, and I hope you have a very successful call.
Thank you so much, Senator Cardin and Gustavo. Now we will turn to Anna Morsi, the shareholder and partner at Greenberg Traurig LLP, and Irakere Picon, our Director of Legal Services, to share what exactly is in the bill, how you can be prepared now to apply. Go ahead, Anna.
Thank you, Rebecca. So I think ultimately, if we could move the slides along, first of all, again, very honored to be part of this group and to be part of such a bipartisan group of legislators that were successful in passing this and ultimately significantly helping small business and nonprofits. So moving along in the slides, we wanted to kind of give you an overview of what's in here from a small business perspective, especially from the Paycheck Protection Program. So moving along with the slides. First of all, as we had, I think it was Senator Rubio who had indicated, this is not a traditional loan program. First of all, what's in here? There's $10 billion in emergency small business grants up to $10,000. And I would really encourage all of you who are small businesses, and we'll discuss what the meaning of small business is under this legislation, to take a look whether you qualify for this. And, however, the caveat here is you just want to make sure that if you qualify for this, you may, for the emergency small business program grant, that you don't disqualify yourself for another type of grant. $350 billion is for the Paycheck Protection Act program, which we will spend the majority of time discussing here today. And again, this is forgivable loans through the Small Business Administration. In addition, there's $17 billion to cover 6 months of payments for small businesses already using SBA loans. So really, there is a lot of money out there on the table for small businesses, and we want to keep you up and going, obviously. So specifically, the point of this call is the Paycheck Protection Program. And what it is basically $350 billion in forgivable loans. It's 100% federally backed, which really makes this very, very very attractive for any lender to be involved in this. So loans are to be administered by the Small Business Administration through certified lenders. New lenders can become SBA certified lenders. And I think our SBA representative later may talk about a little bit later on about the fact that the government is doing everything possible to make as many new lenders available, because the goal is to get this money out to you, the business owners, as soon as possible. Also, we're talking about the fact that the period covered by this Paycheck Protection Program, this particular bill, is only for a very small period of time. We're talking about February 15, 2020 to June 30th, 2020. And as a number of our congressional representatives have already mentioned, there's really talk about additional funding, an additional stimulus bill, because ultimately with the crisis going on, there's a chance that more will be needed for small businesses. I also want to include, and Senator Cardin had mentioned this, the CARES Act does have other loan programs for small businesses. So ultimately, the Paycheck Protection Program, I know, is getting a lot of marketing and hype out there, but please don't forget and don't forego the opportunity to see what other loan programs are available. So the Paycheck Protection Program. First of all, from an eligibility perspective, are you a small business? So big picture, the definition is 500 or less employees. However, there's caveats, and you need to understand what that includes. First of all, the 500 employee count includes all employees. It's full-time, part-time, and other employees, and that or other status employees. And we are still waiting for the implementation regulations to fully understand what that will include and which type of employees that will include. But ultimately, if you're one of those employers who's getting very close to that 500 employee line, we really want to be able, and you really want to be able to sit down with, whether it's a lender, an appropriate representative, to determine that 500 employee count number. Also, just keep in mind that small businesses that meet SBA size standards, they may actually have more than 500 employees and still qualify. So you really want to ensure that even, for example, your business may have 600 employees. If the SBA standard size for your particular business fits under this legislation, you still may qualify for the Paycheck Protection Program. Also, there's special accommodation for, or special part of this program for accommodation and food services. So we're talking about these codes that the government has, and in this particular case, it's the NAICS code starting with 72. So that 500 employee rule is applied on a per physical basis. What that means is, for example, if you have many restaurants and you may have more than 500 employees total, how this is being applied is that they're looking per physical location. So for example, you might have a total of 600 employees, but per location it might be only 100, and you will still qualify for this program. Also, our 501c3s are covered on this. Really significantly, an individual that operates as a sole proprietor or independent contractor. This is something very new in this type of registration, in this type of legislation. However, we are waiting to hear more on implementation regulations. If you take a look at the act itself, basically it's in the section about sole proprietors and independent contractors, there's language that speaks specifically as determined by the administrator and secretary. So we really want to be in front of the SBA and Secretary of Treasury to make sure that these definitions are appropriately developed and applied for this particular legislation. Also, there's tribal business concerns, as well as 501c19 veterans organizations that meet SBA size standards. So again, you can fit under one of many particular categories. I think if you do have any sort of doubt that, well, I may or may not fit under this particular category, please contact us. We can, if you don't have a trusted advisor, we can contact you. We have a whole list of them. Now, what will a lender be looking for? And this is really terrific, and this is what Senator Rubio was talking about. There's no personal guarantee required here. There's no collateral. They're looking for information that the business that is taking out this particular loan or grant was in operation on February 15, 2020, and paying the salary and payroll taxes. Or ultimately, if we're dealing with the independent contractors, information such as Form 1099, that they again qualify for payment under this particular program. So moving on.
To make a quick announcement, the reason that some of these slides are freezing is because we are at capacity with 5,000 people. And so thank you for your patience. But that's why some of the slides might be freezing, and we will send the recording and all of the slides to everyone at the end of the call. So thank you.
And thank you for reminding me, Rebecca, because what we will send out after the call is a worksheet with all of these slides. I think at the end of the day, there's so many things that I think people are very anxious to start preparing. What will I, in terms of how can I calculate my Paycheck Protection Program loan amount? What documentation do I need to get ready? So in terms of calculating that Paycheck Protection Program loan amount, it's basically up to 2.5 times your average monthly payroll, not to exceed $10 million. So this also is separated into 3 different groups. So for example, if you're a non-seasonal employer, which will be the majority of you out there, the way that you calculate the amount that you will receive through this program, or you are eligible to receive, is basically 2.5 times average total monthly payroll costs incurred during the year prior to the loan. And I'll let that sink in for a little while, because I think some of this language tends to be a little bit confusing, and that's why getting these slides to you to think them through is really key. But again, it's 2.5 times your average monthly payroll costs incurred during the year prior to the loan. Now, there are also provisions for seasonal employers. So, for example, for our farmers, or even in our hospitality industry, the calculation is basically 2.5 times the average monthly payroll costs for the 12-week period beginning 2/15/2019 or 3/1/2019. And by the way, those 2019 dates are correct. And that beginning date is optional to the loan borrower and ending on 6/30/2019. And the reason for this is because ultimately last year was probably, arguably a very good economic year. So for these seasonal employers, the government wants them to rely on numbers that were most advantageous for them. We've also had quite a few questions about businesses that were not operational in 2019. And there is a specific provision for those types of businesses, and basically the calculation is 2.5 times average monthly payroll costs incurred for January and February 2020. Now, let's talk about what is exactly monthly payroll costs, because, as you leave this call and after this call, we're still, as a number of us have mentioned, and we can move on to the next slide here, but as a number of us have mentioned, we're still waiting for implementation regulations. And I think a lot of us are extremely anxious. Well, what do I do? Can I do anything? Yes, you can do something here. You can actually calculate your payroll costs. And what is the definition of payroll costs? Well, it's the sum of included payroll costs minus sum of excluded payroll costs. And in terms of the included payroll costs, that includes salaries, wages, commissions, or similar compensation. I mean, this is extremely broad. Payment of cash tips or equivalents. Again, extremely broad, especially, and very good for the restaurant industry. Payment of vacation, family, medical, or sick leave. Allowances for dismissal or separation. And then moving forward, so bear with us as we move forward here a little bit. Those calculations also include payment for group health insurance benefits, including insurance premiums. That's a huge cost for any business. Also retirement benefits, payment of state and local taxes. So, the homework for all of you out there who are thinking, you know what, yes, I qualify for this. I really want to apply for this sooner than later. Getting together those costs in terms of payroll is very, very key. Caveat here, for our sole proprietors and independent contractors, basically, if you're making, more than $100,000, you may not be able to take advantage of this. Again, we can talk you through the specifics of this. What is excluded from payroll cost calculation? This is extremely important as well. Compensation of employee in excess of $100,000 as prorated from 2/15/2020 to 6/15/2020. Again, the whole point here is the government wants to help the workers that really most need the help. Payroll taxes and income taxes are also excluded. Compensation of an employee whose principal place of business is outside of the U.S., that makes sense. And qualified sick leave or family leave that was already covered under the previous Families First Coronavirus Response Act. So moving on. We just kind of wanted to give you an idea. This is just a very quick example. So for example, if there's an employer, and this calculation is pretty easy, but ultimately if the average total amount of payroll over the last year, and this is average total monthly payroll over the last year has been 100,000, that 100,000 is multiplied by 2.5, and the maximum loan amount benefit that you will be eligible for is 250,000. So as we move on to the next slide, I want to reiterate again, it's really important to figure out those payroll costs because that will really give you the basis to apply for this Paycheck Protection Program very easily once the lenders are up and going and we have the regulations, the implementation regulations in place. Loan forgiveness. Now, ultimately, the way that this is listed in the Act, it's called a loan. But when you take a look at it and how it's structured, this is a grant. This will be forgiven if you use this for payroll costs, for costs related with group health insurance benefits, interest on mortgage obligations, rent or leases, utility payments. And how this forgiveness amount is measured, it's basically the amount equal to eligible expenses during the 8-week period beginning on the date of origination of the loan. What does all of this mean? This means that if you get your loan, let's say on April 1st, you want to ensure that you are keeping very good records for an 8-week period of all of these costs that I have outlined on this slide. And again, we're talking about utility payments, interest even on other obligations. So this is quite broad as well. Now, the only caveat here is that your loan forgiveness cannot exceed the principal. But regardless, I think for many of your businesses, this will be easy to meet because, many of us are really suffering out there. Now, the only thing that you may need to be careful here, and I really don't want to go into a lot of detail about this, is that there could be a forgiveness reduction. So, and there's these formulas in the Act, and we could go through them in detail if any of you have interest on the side. But basically, your amount of forgiveness of this payment protection loan or grant may be reduced if you reduce the number of employees, or the reduction is greater. The reduction in wages is greater than 25% that is ultimately paid to employees. One thing I did want to mention here, because a lot of our businesses have found themselves in the situation where they've already let go workers. They can't keep their doors open. So what this particular piece of legislation does is that if the reductions in employment or wages occurred between February 15th, 2020, so again, we're going back here, February 15th, 2020, and ending 30 days after the enactment of this CARES Act, which is 30 days after it was signed by President Trump, this will not impact any business negatively as long as the borrower eliminates the reduction by June 30th, 2020. So what am I talking about here? So basically, if you laid off someone even as early as February 15th, but you rehire them And the money that ultimately you received under this particular program is used to pay for funds or other eligible services by June 30th. That amount will be forgiven as well. And I will turn it over to Irakare at this point.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm the Director of Legal Services for the American Business Immigration Coalition, and we're briefly going to discuss what businesses and nonprofits and any other eligible entity can do to prepare themselves for these applications. Obviously, the caveat is that the regulations have not been written, and we'll need to see what that looks like at the end of the process. But for now, what we recommend all eligible entities, including businesses and nonprofits, is to start determining and collecting the information as it relates to payroll expenses, figuring out what's going to be included, figuring out what's going to be excluded based on the language in the bill and what we've discussed in the earlier slides. Remember that you don't have to show that your business or your nonprofit or your eligible entity has lost any revenue. The only thing that's going to be used to determine your eligibility in terms of the loan amount is payroll expenses. And as Anna mentioned, the funds from that loan can be used for more than just the payroll expenses that you've had. It's also for rent, interest on pre-existing mortgages, and other loans through June 30th, 2020. It's also important that in addition to talking to your accountant or your payroll department or HR department, that you also reach out to your lender. It could be the bank that issues the checks. It could be your personal bank. It could be the bank that previously issued you a small business loan. But it's going to be really important that you reach out to your lender and confirm that they are certified to be a small business administrator for these SBA loans. And if they're not a certified SBA lender, ask them if they're willing or interested in becoming a certified lender, because under this legislation, the Treasury Department and the SBA itself will be making the process for new lenders to come on board as certified SBA lenders. So those are sort of the quick things that you can do as a business owner or as a nonprofit to get this information started, so that when the regulations come out and banks start processing these applications, you're prepared to go in there and fill out all the information in terms of what that loan is going to look like.
Great. Thank you so much, Irakere and Anna. Next, I am so privileged to introduce Renee Bender. Renee is the Senior Professional Staff and Implementation Expert at the U.S. Senate Small Business and Entrepreneurship Committee. Renee is going to share with us her work and also some guidance for us in terms of the implementation steps, timeline, business and nonprofit eligibility, any advice on lenders. So I would just kick it over to Renee for a few minutes, and then we'll open it up for questions. Thank you all so much. We have over 400 questions already, and we'll go into them next. So go ahead, Renee.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Rebecca mentioned, my name is Renee Bender, and I am a staffer for Chairman Marco Rubio on the Senate Small Business and Entrepreneurship Committee. It is certainly my pleasure to be on the call today to join this great roster of folks that you have providing excellent information on ways that you can access the Payroll Protection Program loans that we have worked really hard on over the past few weeks to get enacted into law in a very bipartisan and bicameral manner. So obviously the structure of the program has been very well covered by previous speakers. So I'm going to speak to just a couple of quick top line items to give context, and then talk a little bit about implementation and a couple of things that I think there have been some confusion on that I'd like to clarify while I have the opportunity to speak to so many people on the line. So first, I would say that in working on this program, the real intent of the senators and of our counterparts in the House was to maintain employee and employer relationships throughout this very difficult time of public health interruptions, so that when we get to a point where these restrictions have been lifted and people are hopefully opening back up their businesses and people are going back to work, that employers and employees, that there's a business there to open back up and that those employees are coming back to work. So it's really the intent here is to provide some continuity during this time where you as the business owner or the self-employed or sole proprietor, through no fault of your own, have been ordered to shut down your business for a period of time. And so what we try to do in this structure is, as mentioned, the approved lenders through the SBA 7A program, those who are already lenders through that program, the intent is for them to stand up this program very quickly. So as mentioned, Secretary Mnuchin said he would like for this program to be operational by Friday. I know SBA and Treasury have been working around the clock through the weekend. Our team spoke with them several times over the weekend on implementation, and they are really gearing up to get initial guidance out today, so that there's some initial guidance on what the terms will be. They're working very closely to ensure that the terms for SBA-approved lenders or a Treasury-approved lender are the same, so that you as the borrower, it does not matter whether you go to an SBA-approved lender or to a Treasury-approved lender, you will be able to access the exact same product. So that, I think, in initial guidance we will get from SBA and Treasury that, again, is supposed to come out today, will provide the basic mechanisms and sort of some of the front-end approval process points that I think will be very helpful for lenders. The goal here is for SBA and Treasury to provide very clear instructions so that lenders feel very confident to move forward to make these loans quickly. As mentioned, we try to do our very best to streamline the process, to take out, personal guarantee, collateral requirements, all of those things off the table to get these loans out the door very quickly. Now, Treasury will also be approving additional lenders. So what does all this mean with Treasury and SBA, and is this confusing? So when we're using the SBA structure, as mentioned, you should be able to go to your bank. We want for people to be able to go to whomever they have a banking relationship with and get this loan. If that happens to be an SBA lender, great. For the purposes of these loans, any lender who is currently an SBA lender will have automatic delegated authority to make these loans. Now, what does delegated authority mean? That means that they do not have to go through the SBA to make a loan to you if you're looking for a PPP loan. So we're saying that if you make, maybe 5 or 6 SBA loans a year and you don't have delegated status, you're thinking, gosh, I'm going to have to go through this whole approval process to be able to make these loans without having to go through SBA's processing centers. We're saying, for the purposes of these loans, you skip that process. You are delegated for making these loans. That same delegated authority will apply to any lender that Treasury approves to make loans under this program. So if Treasury approves your lender that you work with, that you bank with, they will automatically be able to make those loans without going through all of SBA's channels and processes. So what we're trying to do here is to enable those SBA lenders to get a first wave of loans out the door very quickly, and have Treasury begin to approve lenders to build out capacity so that people across the country have access to these loans. So already the SBA 7A program has a public-private partnership with over 2,000 lenders across the country. They may be your community bank, but they also are Bank of America, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, Citibank, all have designated SBA divisions where they do SBA lending. So what we're trying to do is to make this as simple a process as possible, as accessible as possible. And in the implementation, we've asked for SBA and Treasury to really focus on making that certification that you as the borrower have to make to the lender of what you're going to use your loan proceeds for as streamlined and standardized across the board, so that everyone knows the rules of the road. And to the points that have already been made as you gather your documentation, that everyone is getting the same application, everyone's getting the same certification documents So really the goal here is simplicity, continuity between SBA and Treasury, and to make it as clear as possible for lenders to make these loans and for borrowers to know the rules of the road as they go into it, so these things happen very quickly. Now, we are hopeful that SBA and Treasury will do initial guidance, hopefully today. Again, hopefully, that's what we've been told. And there will be additional guidance that rolls out throughout the week. Certainly, they will need to address some of the things that, for example, SBA previously has not given loans to nonprofits. So that is something new that they have not had to do before. So they're going to need to be very thoughtful about that guidance, about how the loan process for nonprofits will go. They'll need to have some guidance for the independent contractors and self-employed. We tried to write the language in a way that would allow them to be very broad in interpretations to cover as many people as possible. One thing I want to clarify here is we do have on the $100,000 cap for salaries, we intend for that to apply to independent contractors and sole proprietors as well. That your salary up to $100,000 would be covered for this period of time. So both for the larger employer side, you would be able to cover salaries for your employees up to $100,000, as well as the independent contractors and self-employed and 1099 workers. So those are some of the things that we're working through with the agencies to ensure that in this implementation process, that not only is it as fast as possible, but that we're really being thoughtful about streamlining processes and making things clear and easy for both the lenders and the borrowers. It's a tall order, but certainly Chairman Rubio and senators who have been involved, members across the Senate who have been in contact with our office, are all here for the same purpose, and that is to ensure that that lenders have certainty, and that you as the borrowers who are on the line, that you're able to access these loans as quickly and seamlessly as possible. And I'll go ahead and stop there. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Renee. Wow, that was so clear. So we have a lot of questions. We have over 500 questions now, and we will do question and answer for the next 15 minutes. Again, our commitment to you is that we will host weekly webinars to ensure the smooth implementation of the Paycheck Protection Program, and then working closely with our champions like Renee, Chairman Rubio, Chairwoman Velázquez, Senators Durbin and Cardin. So I will just read off a few questions at a time. And for the panelists, Renee, Anna, and Irakere, feel free to jump in. So the first question is, I went to my lender this morning, and my lender told me that they're not certified by the SBA and that they don't know anything about this program. What should I tell my lender? Second question, what if I am a new business and I don't have enough proof of payroll yet? Third question, I have a guitarist playing in my restaurant, but they're treated as independent contractors. May I include them in the PPP? Renee, do you want to start off, and then if others want to jump in?
Sure. So first, if you're, as I mentioned, I'll take the first question. If people want to jump in on the others, I'll start with so if you, again, if your banker, if your lender is not SBA certified lender, they can apply to become an SBA certified lender, or they can elect to apply through Treasury. So we're trying to provide a dual track approach to ensure that lenders are going to be onboarded very quickly. So that's what I would say, is that they can contact the SBA or Treasury, and Treasury will be setting up their process. I think they're moving very quickly on this. I feel very heartened by the conversations that we've had with them thus far, that they will have a process in place very soon for approving bank and non-bank lenders. So keep in mind that we're trying to get to, when we say non-bank lenders, we're trying to get to those institutions that certain communities may deal with more often, whether that is a mission-based lender, a nonprofit lender, in a community. I know there are a number of non-bank lenders who participate in some of SBA's programs, and so those folks in your community may also be certified through the SBA. But again, you should be able to go through the SBA or Treasury, and the lender will have the option as to which they would like to choose.
Thank you. Anna or Irakere, do you want to answer the question about the guitarist? I have a guitarist play at my restaurant. They're treated as independent contractors. May I include them in the PPP, in the program?
My recommendation would be yes, and the reason for that is because ultimately under this regulation, the payroll costs that are included in the overall calculation are salary, wages, commissions, or similar compensation, and even payment of cash tips or equivalent. So again, it is extremely broad in terms of what's allowable under this payment protection program.
Great. Is the unemployment increase different from the stimulus checks? Second question, where exactly do I access this application? Third question, how do we calculate union worker hours and their benefits with the union under this program?
This is Irakere. I'll take the first question. In terms of the direct stimulus checks, which were increased by an additional $600, that program is separate from the Paycheck Protection Program. So individuals whose employment has been affected by this pandemic and have been laid off, have been let go, and are looking to apply for unemployment, they can expect to receive an additional $600 on top of what they will be receiving in terms of unemployment insurance from their state. That is separate and different from the Paycheck Protection Act, which is a forgivable loan that's available to small businesses, nonprofits, independent contractors, sole proprietors, and any other covered entity.
And I'd like to jump in on that one as well, because what's really nice under the CARES Act is that unemployment insurance has also been extended for the individuals who traditionally weren't eligible. So basically, CARES creates this pandemic unemployment assistance program that's valid through December 31st, 2020. And again, non-traditional employees are eligible for unemployment insurance. So we're talking about self-employed, independent contractors, those with a limited work history. So, a lot of, I think there's a lot of benefit to those individuals in this bill as well.
Renee, do you want to take a question?
Yeah, I'll jump in on the union question, and you may have to repeat the second one, I'm sorry. But I think that will really come down to the guidance. We didn't provide any specificity to how certain hours are calculated. I've gotten a number of questions about how do we calculate it if we draw our pay, if as the owner you draw from your business for it to pay yourself, all those different nuanced types of questions. So I think that is really unfortunately going to become a question of guidance from the SBA and Treasury, which is why it's so important that they start rolling that out as soon as possible. So I will be very communicative with the folks on this line to share guidance as we get it from SBA and Treasury. And if, as you look it over, and if you have questions, things that aren't addressed, please feel free to let me know. We're going to be communicating with SBA on whether they need to issue additional guidance or clarifying certain parts of guidance that they release. So this will be an ongoing process, but certainly we're all invested in getting this implemented quickly and correctly. So it'll take a village of people pointing out different things that we need to address.
Thank you. Really appreciate that, Renee. Where exactly do we access this application, and by when do you think the application will be available?
On that front, again, this will be once they should be putting together, SBA and Treasury, a streamlined application process and for the lenders to adhere to, and that certification piece where you as the borrower, in order to get forgiveness later, you certify a good faith certification that you're going to use the loan for the eligible uses that have been outlined a number of times here on the line, so I won't go all into that. So those should be the lenders who are already participating in the 7A program should be able to get those applications to folks immediately once they go live. And then as additional lenders become approved, again, they will be able to share those applications with borrowers. There's also SBA is working through their online platform to ensure they'll be working to ensure that if a borrower wants, they don't have, maybe their lender doesn't participate or is not going to, or whatever the situation may be, that they can access the online SBA portal, put in their information, and be matched with lenders who could provide the loan for them. So this all is the guidance piece. Once they get this up and running, it'll be, we're hoping, again, this is a new concept. So we're trying to deal with as many things on the front end as possible, but there will certainly be snags here and there. But to the extent possible that the application is made available and the certification process to lenders as soon as SBA and Treasury have it ready. So again, the Secretary of Treasury has said that he would like for this process to be for loans to start going out as of Friday. So I think that we will have a lot more information that is rolling in over the next 24 hours.
Great. Thank you so much, Renee. I run a nonprofit. How do I prove that there has been a loss of income? For example, I had to cancel our annual fundraiser that is next month that contributes over 15% of my revenue each year. So general guidance on how does a nonprofit prove loss of income to qualify for this grant. And then I also applied for and received some state and federal relief. Is that going to affect or prevent my ability to apply for this federal loan?
In terms of
Renee,
in terms of the first question, the way that the loan amount is calculated and what's used is the payroll expenses, and that's really meant to cover payroll expenses as well as the other consistent expenses like rent, utilities, mortgage interest, interest on other debt obligations. In terms of lost income or lost revenue, that's really not taken into consideration. I'm not sure if Renee has any insight in terms of regulations and what's to come with that, but in terms of the way the legislation is written, all the lenders have to look for is the payroll expenses to determine the loan amount.
That's correct. We intended for this to be very simple, and we didn't want to burden the process by having a nonprofit or for-profit business have to calculate how much revenue they may have lost. It's a very simple, was your business operational on February 15th, and were you paying salaries and payroll taxes? Those are the two pieces of that. So I completely agree. And then Rebecca, could you repeat the second question? I had an answer for it, but I was looped into the other answer here.
Oh, sure. So basically, if I benefited from local and other federal relief loans for my business, do I qualify?
Yes, you do. So we do not preclude any borrower from getting, for example, a state bridge loan program. If they participate in a bridge loan program or anything at the state level, you would still be eligible for the PPP loan. We have also tried to provide some continuity between different benefits that have been out there. So for example, if you apply for an economic injury disaster loan from SBA which is a direct loan from SBA, before the Paycheck Protection loan is available, you would be able to refinance that loan into a forgivable loan. So we're providing an opportunity there for folks who did not have this option and may have applied on that side. There's also, as Senator Cardin mentioned in his remarks, an EIDL grant of up to $10,000, which would again come from the SBA direct lending, so direct money from SBA that is meant to be for those small businesses who need a really short-term gap And those are supposed to be turned around within like 3 days. So very quick turnaround on those for you to get some coverage for payroll expenses. So if you've got your $10,000 grant and you realize, gosh, I really do need a bigger loan, or this is not going to cover it, or whatever the situation may be, you are able to then apply for a Payroll Protection Program loan. And what would happen is that $10,000 amount would just be reduced from your forgivable amount for the PPP loan. So you would still be able to get both an EIDL grant and a PPP loan. You can also get a PPP loan for all the forgivable purposes and still get an EIDL loan if you use that EIDL loan for different purposes. So the only prohibition here is you can't get a PPP loan and an EIDL loan from SBA for the same purposes, for payroll costs and those fixed costs that have been mentioned before. So those are some of the ways that we try to make sure that borrowers would be able to have access to the kind of relief they need and how those different pieces would work together.
That's just fantastic, Renee. And again, I know this is a lot of information. We'll send the webinar recording and the slide deck and the materials you heard on this call to everyone who registered and ones who weren't able to because we reached capacity. Next, I am honored to introduce Steve Choi, who is the co-chair of NPNA and the director of the New York Immigration Coalition. Steve and NYIC worked closely with New York Senator and Senate Leader Chuck Schumer and Congresswoman Chairwoman Nydia Velázquez on the small business relief package. Steve, go ahead.
Great, thank you, Becca. So I'll keep this short and sweet. I want to recognize the fact that while Senators Rubio and Cardin and especially Chuck Schumer, Dick Durbin on the Senate side were pushing through this, it was Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez who was really holding it down on the House side. She's the chair of the House Small Business Committee. She's been a fierce champion for immigrants. She worked incredibly hard for both immigrants and small businesses to make sure that this particular section was inclusive. I have to say it's really tragic and a poignant reminder of what we're facing, that Congresswoman Velázquez actually got sick the very day after this legislation was signed, and she told me yesterday that she was confirmed to have the coronavirus. So I ask that everybody keep her in your prayers. And I'm just going to read a really brief statement that the Congresswoman has written, and I also have an ask for everybody after this. So here's the statements. Last Friday, the House passed a sweeping relief effort that is aimed at helping small businesses. And if small businesses keep their employees on payroll during this crisis, these loans will be fully forgiven. Also, for the first time in history, we've secured a new program that will provide $10 billion for emergency grants to small businesses. And finally, if you are a current recipient of an SBA 7A 504 or micro loan and have payments due soon, we are providing payment relief for 6 months, including on principal, interest, and fees. My friends, no bill is perfect, and I've been clear that it will take future aid efforts in the weeks and months to come to fully put our small businesses and workers on the path to recovery. But I'm confident that the steps we have taken will be a lifeline for main streets across this country. I know there are questions about the enactment of the relief programs and how quickly they will ramp up, but I can assure you that I've been in close contact with SBA Administrator Carranza and have expressed my partnership and hope that the agency will move quickly. I'm deeply sorry I could not be with you today. If I've taken anything away from my leadership on the committee, it is that small businesses are resilient, hardworking, and they get the job done. During these difficult times, I want you to know that we have your back and will continue to fight for federal relief to defeat this crisis. Thank you, and please be healthy and safe. So, I just want to note that on our behalf, we are incredibly thankful to Congresswoman Velázquez and all the senators for making this happen. We can stand to benefit from potentially hundreds of thousands, and I know I speak for our member agencies. So we are incredibly grateful. And so to everybody on this call, everybody on this webinar, I have an ask. And that is to work with us at the same time that we are going to benefit from this. And we are incredibly grateful for that. We have an ask to make sure that we, the thousands of people on this webinar, are also helping lift up a message of inclusion at this time. So we are launching a campaign. It's hashtag We Are All In This Together. It's a positive campaign to thank everyday heroes who are working in essential jobs. And it's really thanking all of those on the front lines who are risking their health every day as they go to work, talking about bus drivers, supermarket employees and baggers, agricultural workers, of course, nurses, doctors, and home care workers, delivery workers, maintenance and cleaning people. So specifically what we're asking is to join us on social media. Take pictures of these folks who are really heroes and use the hashtags. There are two hashtags. One is hashtag We Are All In This Together, and two, hashtag Our Heroes. And to really make sure that we are really lifting up our small business owners, our workers, and the immigrants and refugees that make up such a huge portion of both our small business owners and our workforce. Please use those two hashtags, We Are All In This Together and hashtag Our Heroes, because when we are all in this together, we can indeed beat the virus. Thank you, Becca. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Steve. To provide us with closing remarks and next steps, I'm so honored to introduce ABIC co-chair Sam Scott. Mr. Scott is the retired CEO of Corn Products International and one of my personal heroes. Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Becca. First, I'd like to thank all of the presenters today for all of the information they provided. It's been extremely helpful, and we really appreciate it. Second, on behalf of all of the co-chairs of ABIC, I would again like to thank Senator Rubio and Representative Velázquez for their being champions for small businesses and not-for-profits for all workers. And also thanks to Senator Durbin and Cardin for their additional support. Priority for the upcoming months for ABIC is going to be to ensure successful and smooth implementation to get the $377 billion to small businesses, to not-for-profit workers, and for those that need it the most. To this end, we need your engagement and participation. Please tell us what's working, what's not working, and what's bothering you. We will send you a simple one-pager to prepare for grants in the program and information on the upcoming webinar. Go to your lenders today, apply for the program, and get started. Our next webinar is going to be same time next week, next Tuesday at 1 o'clock, April 7th. And with that, Becca, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. That includes our webinar for today. Again, we'll send out information, a recording of the webinar, all the materials that you see, the PowerPoint, and information for next week's webinar. Again, our commitment to all of you from all of our host committee and partners is to ensure a successful and smooth implementation for this program. Thank you all very, very much.